Laura with And Sewing is Half the Battle. This is going to be a brief tutorial on handling firearm replicas and props safely. This tutorial came about because I started seeing more and more evidence mounting up that costumers really need a couple of good references for how to handle firearms accurately and also for handling them safely. I've talked to lots of security people who have told me great stories, I mean that slightly sarcastically, about SWAT teams being called out about cosplayers' weapons. I know of a couple of incidents where police were called to a fast food restaurant where a cosplayer decided to grab lunch during the con or on the way home. They're still in costume, still had their props on, and caused some alarm in the restaurant. There's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. We definitely don't want law enforcement getting called to the con. We definitely don't want cosplayers missing the con because they're trying to explain things to law enforcement or are in jail. You know, we don't need that. That's not what we're about. And we certainly don't want to be frightening people and leading to other problems there as well. So this is just going to keep everybody safe. It's going to help make your photos look a lot better. A lot of cosplayers are not trained to handle firearms safely, accurately, and competently. And not only is that a little bit of a safety issue, but also it makes your photos not look quite so awesome as they really could look. So we want to make sure that your photos are just as fantabulous as they could possibly be. So this will help with that too. Also, please keep in mind this video is not standalone. There's a print article that goes along with it. Please be sure and check it out. Okay, so you've got your realistic weapons props with you, and you've put a lot of time into them as a cosplayer. Of course you put a lot of time into them. You want them to look really good. So they look really good. Let's say you're in a state with open carry law, so carrying a gun visible on your person is legal. Might not seem like a big deal because even if somebody thinks my cosplay prop is a real weapon, I'm still not breaking any laws. And as soon as you reach for or lift this, a person can reasonably assume that you are engaging in deadly force. Is that the message you're trying to convey at this moment? Could you get you into trouble? If you're in a state without open legal carry, where open carry is illegal, anyone who sees you with a realistic prop can reasonably assume that you're a criminal, currently violating state law and therefore liable at any moment to violate more state laws. So seeing anything that might be perceived as a real weapon can quite reasonably cause alarm in the local populace. And this is something you need to be considering. In addition, many states have laws regulating carry, even where open carry is legal, even where concealed carry is legal, all of these different things. There may still be laws regulating where you can carry and what you can do with it, whether or not you can go into restaurants. If you can go into a restaurant, where you're allowed to sit in that restaurant, maybe specified by law. So even if you're in an area where you think you're fine, but you sit in the wrong place in a restaurant, you might find yourself speaking with law enforcement. Here's what doesn't happen, by the way. Oh, I'm just gonna run into McDonald's real fast, so, oh darn, I gotta put this someplace. I know, I'll just tuck it in here, it won't be a problem. It'll be a problem. Remember that any fake weapon, which a reasonable person might assume, might interpret to be a real weapon, is legally a real weapon. So, if I'm carrying a fake gun, but it looks real, and someone thinks that I'm about to do harm with it, I'm legally liable for that. So you can still be charged with assault, etc., with a prop weapon. In addition, if someone sees your prop weapon and it causes alarm, and let's be honest, if you're talking with a police officer about this, it's caused alarm, you can be charged with disorderly conduct because you created that situation which alarmed people. So if you're thinking, hey, it's no big deal, if anybody asks, I'll just show them that it's a plastic gun and it's not a big deal, by the time somebody asks, it might be too late. Also keep in mind that what people see might be obvious, you know, this might be obvious to someone who knows your source and knows your character. No, this is obviously this replica weapon from this particular game, but it might not be so obvious to everyone else. These are all prop weapons that we have that have been, you know, mistaken. This one, from across the parking lot, this can look kind of realistic. Up close, it looks pretty cheesy, but from a parking lot, you know, distance or through a window, so it can look pretty good. So it's tagged to make it obviously, you know, less threatening. Payne's gun from Final Fantasy X-2. Definitely some fantasy elements going on here, but you'd be amazed what the populace can perceive as a weapon. So this is something that we'd probably be careful with anytime we weren't in close interaction. And Luce and Ombra, famously we describe these as our letter L guns. Once you see the letter L, you can't unsee the letter L, so they're great for cons and con security. But the number of times we have been approached by people who thought these were much more realistic than they are is staggering. We're not talking single digits. Security has checked these repeatedly. We've had people ask about the replica weapons they saw us holding. They're the letter L people, okay? But people see things and they just assume, and they fill in, their minds fill in. Something that's pretty unrealistic. This is the Kaito Kid Shooter Special. Okay, it looks pretty obviously not a very threatening weapon. So you got a little more latitude with something like this. But with a more realistic prop, you need to be careful. So be safe, good rule of thumb, don't carry realistic weapons outside the con. Inside the con, you still need to handle them responsibly. We'll talk about that. Outside the con, just better not to. Now, it is unfair, but it is true that what you're wearing will influence how people view you. If you're in an obviously over-the-top crazy costume and you've got weapons strapped on, a lot of people will give you leeway. Obviously this person just walked out of the theater, they're on break, grabbing some lunch before they go back for the evening show, and those are probably fake guns. If you're wearing street clothes, maybe from one of the survival horror games or something, but you've got guns on, yeah, if I'm familiar with your source, I might recognize that you're playing a particular character, game character, but the average person on the street is going to see a guy in street clothes and weapons. We're all conditioned to see different things, and I go to cons all the time, and I'm used to seeing, bloody emo McEmo and Guro Lolita or whatever. And if the zombie apocalypse ever does come, I'm going to walk out of my house and be like, oh, why didn't anybody tell me there was a con today? And then I get my brains eaten, okay? But a lot of people who aren't used to that, they're going to react when they see those things and interpret them a little bit differently. Okay, there are 4 rules to handling any firearm, and these rules apply all the time. The nice thing about these rules is they stack up, so you have to violate at least 2 of them before you can actually injure someone. So they're great rules to know anyway, but they also apply equally to replica weapons. The first rule is all guns are always loaded. You would never do anything with an unloaded gun that you would not do with a loaded gun. And the same is going to be true with a prop weapon. You are never going to handle a prop weapon in a way that you would not handle a real gun. And this gets broken all the time at cons. We'll talk about that a little bit more. This is a really critical thing to keep in mind. Rule number 2, never cover anything you're not willing to destroy. And I had to redo this because my dog walked by when I was talking, and I couldn't lift the gun as she was walking, by. So there we go, because I didn't want it to cross her as she was going. Now, obviously, this is going to make some of your photo shoots a little bit difficult. Hold on, we'll talk about that later. There are ways to do this, but in general, this is a really good rule to keep in mind. Rule number 3. Your finger does not touch the trigger until you have made the decision to pull it, until you are actually in the act of firing. There are several ways you can do this. A lot of people will index a finger straight line along their realistic gun prop. I personally have a bend in my index finger. There are reasons for this, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing here today. Honestly, either of these will work. You're not going to have your finger sitting on the trigger for all of your poses. Not only is this a major safety issue, but it's also instantly broadcasting that you're not trained to handle your firearm with any competency, and it makes your photos look pretty dumb. So we'll talk more about that later as well. And rule number 4, know what your target is and know what's past it. And this is not really a big issue for costumers because we don't have real guns, we're not aiming at actual targets, and we're never going to fire them. But it's a good thing to keep in mind, and it can help you set up some better photo shoots as well, too. I had to go get a less realistic gun because I couldn't make myself do this with one of the ones that looked better. But I see this all the time at cons where people are holding their fingers on the trigger, and they're talking to their friends, and they're waving it around, and they're covering everybody in the room, and oh my gosh, and it's just absolutely everything you could possibly do wrong, you're doing all at the same time. I mean, I've had to walk away because it just really, really bothered me to see this. If there's any question in anyone's mind as they glance across the dealer room or see you on the sidewalk outside the convention center or whatever, if there's any question in anyone's mind whether or not that's a real weapon, they can't assume that you are an immediate threat to everyone around you and react accordingly. So if you have anything that could possibly be perceived as a real weapon, please handle it like one, because if I see you on the street and you're aiming at everyone with your finger on the trigger, I might react. Okay, so we were handling our guns safely, and now we want to take some photos. So we want these photos to look better, and we also want to get to complete our photo shoot, which means we don't scare anyone. So first thing is set up your photo shoot as a very, very obvious photo shoot. Even if I'm doing, dramatic battle poses, I'm going to do it quietly. There's going to be a photographer here. Maybe I'll have some friends holding flashes for the photographer. If they aren't using off-camera flashes, I'll have some friends standing around texting, talking, hanging out, whatever. And this is probably going to be happening anyway, but I'm trying to create a very obvious, situation that if anybody from across the street glances over and sees me pointing a gun at my, my cosplay friends over here, it should be immediately obvious that no one else in the area is remotely concerned by this situation, and that gives them a second to go, oh, and there's a girl with a giant camera. This is obviously some sort of publicity thing, and they don't panic. So when you're doing your photo shoot outside of the convention center or where the public can see you, this is not the time to yell threats. This is not the time to shout your favorite lines from the film or whatever. This is make it very, very obvious that this is a photo shoot so nobody can misunderstand it. Okay, this next point might sound a little bit heavy, but I think it's a valid point to make. Depending on where you are in the country, anywhere between 1 in 20 and 1 in 10 of the people around you may be carrying a concealed weapon with permit. Okay, so they legally have a weapon that you don't know about. This isn't a bad thing. Most of these people are pretty decent people, but they tend to show up sometimes in situations. One permit carrier responded to the Congresswoman Gifford shooting. Permit carrier recently, just where I live, shot a man who was choking a woman, during a robbery attempt. There was a case where someone was trying to recreate a campus shooting and was going through a campus shooting people, and 3 permit holders drew on him, and he surrendered without them firing any shots, but that stopped a campus shooting. I mean, these things happen. My point is that they might be out there. So if you create a situation that looks like an immediate threat, okay, so I'm here, I'm doing my photos, and I'm, actually challenging and threatening my cosplay friends or whatever for a picture. If I'm doing this outside in public and I'm scaring people because I didn't set up the situation properly, one of those people who's getting scared might have a gun. And here's where it gets tricky, is again, a lot of cosplayers are not trained on how to, properly carry a firearm, properly hold a firearm. So they're just going to do what comes naturally. So I'm here and I'm doing my photo shoot and we're having a great time and isn't this fabulous? And a guy over there yells, hey, whatever. And I go, what was that? And now I've just threatened the guy with the real gun. And he's going to feel really, really bad later when he discovers self-defense wasn't actually necessary because I was holding a piece of EVA foam, but that's not going to take back the bullet. And if I've created a situation that looked threatening and then I apply direct threat, that's not his fault either, that's mine. And so the situation needs to be obviously fake. People need to obviously be relaxed, and you need to make sure it looks like a photo shoot. Now that's very heavy, and I'm sorry. I actually don't think life is really that scary, but it doesn't have to happen more than once for it to be a tragedy, right? So don't allow that kind of situation to develop. Do your photo shoots, have a great time, but make them look like photo shoots. Okay, now that we know how to do our photo shoots safely, let's talk about how to do them so they look really good. Pointing directly at your photographer is going to produce a pretty lame photo. You just get a lot of foreshortening. You can't see any detail of my weapon, and my arms disappear. I just look like a trunk with a dot on the end. Probably also blocking my face as well. I mean, just everything that could possibly go wrong here is. So if you remember, never cover anything you're not willing to destroy. That includes your photographer and their camera. So you'll actually get a lot better shots by going slightly offset. And listen to your photographer as they talk to you. There's a lot of things they can help you out with as you go through this. But for safety and for good photos, don't do this thing. Also, if you're doing anything that looks realistic and you're not really comfortable covering a live person, which is not a bad habit to have, a lot of times, if there's a person here, rather than pointing straight at this person, I can point slightly off, and sometimes that even looks better for your photo too. So I think I've got an example of that we'll throw into the print tutorial. You can see how that works as well. Again, the single biggest mistake I see all the time is finger being on the trigger when you're not actually firing. So all of your James Bond, Charlie Angels, and all those other, mugging for the camera kind of poses, your finger should not be on the trigger. So I can be doing my stylish poses or whatever, but I see all kinds of things. People shooting behind, back, or posing or drawing or whatever, and my finger's never going to be on the trigger in these. I can be doing all kinds of stuff. My finger's never going to be on the trigger in this. So go ahead and do your sexy, ridiculous poses. I have no clue what this pose is actually supposed to accomplish, but darn it, I look good doing it, okay? But do it with your finger indexed rather than on the trigger. A big problem I see with a lot of cosplayers is how they even hold on to their weapon. A lot of cosplayers hold it very loosely or very low, and it's probably because their finger's on the trigger, so they're holding it down low to accommodate that. So you want to hold it very high up, as high up on the weapon as you can possibly cram it with your finger, again indexed along the frame. A lot of anime, manga, comic book, cartoon weapons are a little bit unrealistic. So if you get something that doesn't make that quite so easy, just do the best you can. Slide your hand up as far as you can get it. Again, keep your finger indexed high. And even the truly ridiculously idiotic kinds of weapons, you can still do a lot of this, with this. So one-handed grip is pretty high in the gun. Everything's tucked in nice and tight up here. For two-handed, you're going to roll the heel of your hand into this area and then press everything, again, as high and as tight as you can get it around this way. And that's going to give you the most contact and therefore the most control. Everything that can be touching the gun is. You'll still see some of this, this kind of thing. Those are really not recommended. So also, you really don't want, when you're doing two-handed, you don't want your thumb crossing behind. Close so you can see this. Your thumb crossing behind to grip the weapon. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, in a real gun, the slide's going to come back really fast, and I've seen people lose pieces of thumb that way. It's just not cool. And also, if you're doing that, then your hand's not making full contact over on this side, and you want to hold as much as possible for maximum control. As far as stances go, there's 2 or 3, 4 major stances that are pretty typical and well used. There's the turret or isosceles stance, so named because it forms an isosceles triangle with your arms. Geometry's important, kids. Stay in school, okay? Arms are pretty much straight out. Knees are bent. Weight is forward on the toes. And I know you can't see my lower body probably on the camera, but this is a very good technique. And then another one might be Chapman and the Weaver stances are pretty similar for our purposes. It's going to be a little more open body. Dominant arm, support arm is slightly bent. Other arm is very bent with the elbow pulled in and then drop down. Because this is more open, this might be a good place to show off all of that great costume work that you did. So this might be a better option depending on your source and your costume. So that would be one thing there. And this push-pull action that's going on here. Guys, if you're going for that Rambo look, you can really make your muscles pop doing that. So And then there's a lot of debate on Hollywood films of, oh, police would never use a low ready position. Oh, police would never use a high ready position. Of course, it's going to depend on your situation. For our purposes, go with what's best for your photo shoot. You know, follow your source image or do something that looks better. And you can totally get away with this incredibly Hollywood, you know, I have no clue what I'm doing with this up here, but it looks good. And because we're doing a fandom photo shoot, you know, you can make that work. So have fun with it. And I really hope that this has helped some people. Hopefully we can keep our conventions safer and more comfortable for everyone involved, and also get some really awesome photos coming out of this where you look dangerously competent rather than like you're just holding a piece of plastic. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions or anything. Thank you.